For this tutorial, I'm using Blender version 3.4. Hi, my name is Guy, Mystery Guy. In this tutorial, we're going to use multiple cameras. I'll examine the pros and cons of using a single camera with keyframes and multiple cameras without keyframes. We're going to use the end panel for camera to view, and I'll show you a way to reduce the glare on the floor. We're going to have fun till our daddy took the T-Bird away. Guaranteed. By the end of this tutorial, you're going to create a video that looks just like this. I'd like you to open the file you created during Tutorial 2. If you don't have access to the Tutorial 2 file, here's what I want you to do. Keep the default cube. Add a floor by going to Add, Mesh, Plane. Scale it by typing S30, 30. Move it down by typing G for grab, Z -1, enter. There's your floor. Click on the cube, add keyframes, location, rotation. Go to the end, and then switch to top view. Scroll back out a bit. With the cube selected, type G, and just move it somewhere. That's up to you. Rotate it on the Z-axis, R, Z, 360, keyframes, insert, location, rotation. Go back to frame 1. I'll leave it up to you to add your materials to the cube and to the floor. You're ready to continue with this tutorial now. A couple things to do before we start. Go over to the output properties, change the frame rate to 30, the frame range end, change that to 300. While we're here, might as well go to the output and change the file name. I've chosen Tutorial 5 for my video. The file format is FFmpeg video. The container under encoding is MPEG-4. Then save your work. I've called mine Tutorial 5. And then let's get on to the next part. I'm going to begin by switching to solid view up on the top right. I'm going to disable the lights from the viewport to make our work a little easier. Then I'm going to click on the camera to select the camera. We had 2 keyframes left over from Tutorial 2. I'm going to put my mouse pointer to the right of the last one, hold down the left button, select both keyframes and press delete. Now this camera, we're ready to add 4 more. Shift D, click, Shift D, click, Shift D, click, Shift D, click. You should have camera and then 1, 2, 3, 4 after that. I don't like the names of these cameras. I'm going to rename them. Camera 1. I like that better. Camera 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. In order to tell Blender which camera is active, because they'll be switching back and forth, we do that on the timeline by inserting a marker. Make sure you're at frame 1, click on marker, and then add marker. There's the shortcut, just the letter M. So in a minute, I'm going to tell Blender that camera 1 is active right at frame 1 where that marker is. I need markers for the other cameras. Go to frame 60, add a marker, that's just the letter M. Go to frame 120, add a marker, 180, marker, and 240. Marker. So there's our markers, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It'll correspond to the 5 cameras. Click on camera 1. Go back to frame 1. Now to bind that camera to that marker, go to Marker, Bind Camera to Marker. And now the name of that marker actually says Camera 1. I want to repeat that with the next marker, so I'll click on Marker, jump to Next Marker. Click on Camera 2. Click on Marker, Bind Camera to Marker. Lovely. Jump to Next Marker, go up and select Camera 3, Marker, Bind Camera to Markers. Next, Camera 4, Marker, Bind Camera to Marker. Finally, let's go to the last one, Camera 5, Marker, Bind Camera to Markers. Look at our timeline, Camera 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's the hard part. Now we're going to play with the different views of each camera, and the switching will be done automatically for us. Easy peasy. There's a bit of housekeeping to do first. Our animation ends at frame 300. Let me scroll the mouse wheel back towards me so I can see everything. Now I'm going to click on that cube on the left. See that keyframe? That's at frame 250. I want to move it over to frame 300. When you click on an object, every keyframe is selected, so we can't move it yet. Click on the keyframe on the right so it's the only one selected. Hold the left button down and drag it to the right until it gets to frame 300. Same thing for the middle cube. Click on that keyframe on the right, hold the left button down, drag it to the right. Next cube, click on it, hold the button down, drag it to the right. And the same for the cylinder. Good. Done. I'm going to select Camera 2, then I'm going to grab the playhead back to frame 60 where the marker for Camera 2 is. Camera 1, that view is sort of from the side. When I get to Camera 2 at frame 60, I want the camera to be over here somewhere, looking behind the cubes, looking in this direction. To change the camera view, I'm going to check something first. Press N for the N panel and make sure camera to view is checked off. It is. Now, to change the view, if I hold the mouse wheel down and drag it left and right, I can rotate the view. If I move it up and down, I'm changing the height. If I hold Shift and then push the mouse wheel down, I can pan left and right, forward and back. Now let me get that camera behind the blocks. I'm going to scroll the mouse wheel back a bit to zoom out. I think that's where I'm going to keep it. That's good enough. Let's do Camera 3. So advance to the next marker, frame 120. Click on Camera 3, and I'm going to set that one up now. I'm going to switch to Object Properties so you can see the coordinates of my camera. For Camera 3, I want the camera to be right in front. I'm going to push the mouse wheel down, drag it to the left, hold Shift. I'm going to roll the mouse wheel forward once, zoom in a bit, done. That's Camera 3. I'm going to advance the marker to the next one. That's Camera 4. I'm going to go up to the collection panel, click on Camera 4 to select it. For the view for Camera 4, I want it to be higher up. So I'm going to hold the mouse wheel down, drag the mouse towards me. That gives me the height. I'm going to move it to the left as I'm dragging it. About there. I'm going to let go of the mouse. I'm going to hold the Shift key, push the mouse wheel down, and drag everything up into the center of the frame. Let go of the mouse. That's it for Camera 4. Let me advance that marker to the next one. That's camera 5, frame 240. Click on camera 5 to select it. For this view, I want the camera to be low down and behind the blocks. So I'm going to press my mouse wheel, drag it up, keep dragging it up, move the mouse wheel to the right. Something like that. I'm going to roll the mouse wheel away from me to zoom in a little bit. I'm going to hold Shift, push the mouse button down to drag it. I'm going to rotate that a little bit more. Done. If you'd like to compare your camera settings to mine, I'm going to click on camera 1, and there's the location and rotation. Camera 2, there's the location, rotation, and if you want to change something, just click on it. Type in something new. No keyframes to worry about. Camera 3, camera 4, and camera 5. Let's see what our animation looks like. I still have my lights turned off. I'm going to turn them back on again. And in the top right, I'm going to switch to rendered view. I'm going to go back to frame 1 and then click play. Yeah, very nice. Good. I noticed something I didn't like. Let me grab that playhead way over to the right. It's this area here on the floor. There's a lot of glare. I'm going to fix that. I'm going to click on the floor, go over to the materials properties, and the option that we want to use is the roughness. If I increase the roughness, that's going to make the floor less reflective. Let me click on it and drag it to the right. See, there it goes. Look at the floor. That's a good setting right there, 0.721. But I noticed if I drag it to the left, I can also get that glare to be removed. I'm going to try that, and the setting I ended up using was 0.093. Go to Output Properties, click on it. For the output area, we've already named our file at the beginning of this tutorial. If you don't have that, click the file folder and then specify the folder and file name that you want. The file format is FFmpeg video, and the encoding container is MPEG-4. Then go to the top left, click Render and Render Animation. When you're done, your video will look like this. I'd like to compare two ways to produce the same thing. On the top of my screen, that's the Blender file we just made with our tutorial that uses 5 cameras and the 5 markers. In the bottom part, that's a Blender file that uses 1 camera and 10 keyframes. Let's take a look at how these files were created. In our tutorial, we started with 1 camera, duplicated it to make 5 cameras, added the 5 markers, assigned each camera to each marker, and then from the end panel, we had camera to view. Then we just defined the view for each camera. In the bottom part, we'll go to frame 1, and with the end selected and the camera to view is active, we get the view for camera 1, and then type I, insert location rotation. Then go to frame 59 and type I, location rotation. Then go to frame 60, get a new view. Once that view is set, type I, location rotation. Go to frame 119, type I, location rotation. Go to frame 120, get the next view, and so on. That's how these two files are created. It's a little more work using just one camera. But the real difference is when you edit a video after you've rendered your animation and you look at it and you say, I'd like to make a few changes. Let's see what the differences are about changing these two different files. The first edit I'd like to consider is I'd like camera 3 to start sooner, let's say frame 100. To accomplish that, I'll click on the camera icon, hold the mouse button down and drag it to frame 100, and I'm done. Now camera 3 will start sooner. To accomplish the same thing with keyframes, I would like to move those two keyframes at 119 and 120 over to the 100 mark. I'll box select those two keyframes, hold the left button down and drag them until that rightmost keyframe ends up on 100. Done. The next thing I'd like to consider is I'd like to put a new camera in at, say, frame 140. To do that, I'd pick a camera, duplicate it, add a marker at frame 140, assign the camera to the marker, and then select a new view. To do the same thing with keyframes, I'd go to frame 139 and then type Insert Location Rotation. That will give me a new end point for that section of the keyframes. Then I'd go to 140. Select a new camera view and add a keyframe, location, rotation. I'd go to frame 179, delete that keyframe, and then add another keyframe, location, rotation. The last example is, let me drag that playhead to show you what I have in mind. Camera 4, that's the overhead view. Camera 5 is the rear view. Let's pretend I wanted to switch the order of these and I want the upper view last. I'll click on camera 5, remembering that that's at frame 240, camera 4 is at 180, 180, 240, 180, 240. Got it. Drag this one to the left, camera 4 to 240, camera 5 to 180. Done. Now the top view is last. How do I accomplish that with keyframes? I would picture the keyframe on the right and its partner. I would select them both and I have to move them over frame 180, and then the keyframes at 180 and 239, grab them and move them to the right. To accomplish that, let me scroll out to make room. I'm going to select the keyframe on the right, hold Shift to select its partner, click on the keyframe and drag them, get them out of the way. I'll take the next two keyframes, select them both, click on one, drag it to the 300 mark, and then take the last two keyframes and drag them back to the one. Look, that's awkward. Why is that happening? I'm going to stop. I don't like problems. This was easy. Using the markers, readjusting keyframes, no fun. Here's how I would solve that problem. This section here, let me grab the playhead. That's the view from the rear. The section before it is the view from the top, and I want to reverse those. I would go to frame 180. On the object properties, I would write down the location and the rotation. For the Y rotation, that's close enough to 0, I would write down 0. Then I'd go to frame 240 and write down the data from the location and rotation of that keyframe. I don't need the keyframes at the end of each section. At the one at 239, I'm going to click on that and press delete. I don't need the one at 300. I'm going to click on that and press delete. I'm going to go back to frame 180 and type in the values that I recorded from frame 240. Then I'm going to go into the viewport with my mouse, type I and location rotation. That's the rear view. Then I'm going to go to frame 240 and type in the values that I wrote down from frame 180. I'll go back to the viewport with the mouse and type I, location, rotation. I've just switched them. Now I have to duplicate that keyframe at 180. I'm going to click on that. Shift D, drag my mouse to frame 239. Duplicate that keyframe at 240. Shift D, drag it over to frame 300. Let's take a look now. There's the rear view, and when I get to 240, that's the top view. I've just switched the order of those two views. Not a heck of a lot of fun. I remember I had more fun that time I hit my thumb with a hammer. If you've got a better way to do it, please let me know in the comments. Thank you. I'm going to review what we covered in this tutorial. I showed you how to use multiple cameras, then I took some time to explain the pros and cons of using a single camera with keyframes and multiple cameras without keyframes. We used the end panel again for a camera to view, and I showed you how to reduce the glare on the floor. If you recall back on my very first tutorial, I said for this series of tutorials, I was going to concentrate on lights, cameras, action. I've done lots of cameras, lots of action, and in the next tutorial, I'm going to be teaching you all about lights. You've selected the spotlight for a few tutorials. Here's an example of a point light. You'll be creating this. An example of using the sun type. There's the spot. We're familiar with that. That's what an area lamp looks like. This is a mesh emission. It's that bright cone in the back left. And here's an example of using sky texture. I can't wait. This is going to be fabulous. I'll see you then, folks.